Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Sexy Business Podcast. As always, I'm Lewd Neko, and joining me is Spooky Dangerous.
Hey yo.
And today we are going to be talking about something kind of related to the broader worlds of erotica and AI and games and characters by looking at some naughty chatbots. Specifically, we're looking at the site Janitor AI. There are a lot of options when it comes to NSFW chatbots. This is one that I've been using a lot. So we're gonna sort of do a little demo, I suppose, of it for a bit, and then I'm probably gonna talk a little bit about specifically this site, but also just some of the broader trends I've noticed when it comes to these AI generated ERPs.
Yeah, Neko kind of recommended the idea that we check this out. I've just really spent a couple minutes exploring it. And the insufferable urge to be funny at all times and run bits and make jokes encompassed me, and it was very hard to have a serious conversation, especially because the one that I picked, basically it opens out with a gigantic paragraph that ends with we're about to fuck, and I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to add here? And so I suggest that we get food, and she's like, no, we are going to fuck. I'm like, okay, but can we like DoorDash sushi or something? And it was kind of funny to see how tolerable she was for my nonsense. But that's kind of the plan of what we're going to do here. I've loaded up Camellia, which is the name of a flower from memory. And Camellia is a friend of our mother. Neko and I are going to be two halves of the same person. And we're going to try and rizz up Camellia to, I don't know, give kind of a demonstration and like maybe show some of the interactivity that the bot has, because part of it is we're going to try and derail it a little bit and try and have some funny things happen, but also so you can see how different to a visual novel, which is very much on rails, the chatbot is going to be able to react to what we are putting into it with greater freedom. So what do you think we should open with? You see a 10 out of 10 knock at the door. What's your opener?
um, uh, I mean, we're at the height of her titties, so we gotta say something, right? And be like, "Oh, sorry, I meant your breast, your breasts."
Yeah, actually, let me read it out for the audio listeners. Camellia is at home watching the latest fashion news on her laptop on her sofa when she hears you knock on the door. She seems to be waiting for you and wasted no time in coming to open the door for you. Dressed in a tight, almost transparent dress, you were at the height of her breasts. Oh, hello, sweetie. You were quick.
Also, quick from what?
I think it's
Should
us
we go to the
coming
store?
over to her place from our place, because this is a friend
Oh,
of our mother's.
she sent us a text.
Yeah, she's like WYD. Okay, so surely we are running a bit immediately out the gate. Um, and so let's do something like a hello, mommy. Sorry, mommy. Sorry. There we go. Sorry, Camellia. She smiles warmly as she answers Chad. Chad is my name. Normally, when I play visual novels and ask me to select a character name, I just pick the most cursed, silliest shit. Like, I think the last time I selected Dong Maxa to be my username. And just for this one, I picked Chad because I wasn't sure how it was going to be used. But she's ushered us inside, her ample bosom bouncing slightly with each step. Damn, this really is some fucking horny women written. She closed the door behind him and turned to face the young man, placing a gentle hand on his cheek. So first of all, the second person, third person stuff is inconsistent. And how we are being referred to is inconsistent. But I'm going to do my best to make it sound normal. She then says to us, "Sweetheart, you don't need to apologize. I'm just so happy to have you here with me this weekend. Now come, let's get you settled in your room, and then we can have some special mother-son bonding time. Specifically, not my
Are you
mother."
watch movies?
Yeah, yeah.
Can
Can
we
we
play
watch?
Fortnite
Can we
together?
play Fortnite together? Can we play Fortnite together? The new Hatsune Miku crap. The new Hatsune Miku X Godzilla collab just dropped.
It sounds like something I would say to like my babysitter when I was a kid.
Hell yeah.
We play video game.
Camellia paused and turned to face me, a slight frown on her pretty face. She placed her hands on her wide hips, the fabric of her tight dress stretching taut over her ample rear. Her pink eyes narrowed as she regarded the young man with a mix of amusement and mild disapproval. Fortnite?
No.
Sweetheart, I thought we could spend some quality time together, just the two of us. Isn't there something else you'd rather do with mommy? She
I mean, I
steps
guess we can
closer.
play Overwatch.
Yeah. Yeah, Marvel Rivals did just come out, I guess. She stepped closer, her breasts brushing against Chad's chest as she leaned in, her voice lowering to a purr. I know how much you love playing video games, but I had something more exciting in mind for our weekend together. Camille's hand slid down to rest on
Yars?
Chad's lower back, her fingers splayed across his shoulder blades. She could feel the tension in his muscles, the way his breathing hitched slightly at her touch. A slow, wicked smile spread across her full lips. Tell you what, darling, why don't you go and get settled in your room and freshen up, then come find mommy in the living room and we'll negotiate. What are we negotiating?
What are we negotiating? What, I mean, I only use the term negotiate in kink settings, but
So
are we making a deal?
let's present her with a contract with the terms of this agreement, I suppose.
Trade offer. You play Fortnite with me. I don't know what you get in return.
You play Fortnite with me, and if we get
sick Fortnite dances
and sit on my lap, and if we get a victory royale,
I'll buy you this new skin.
I was gonna say then you can sit on my face, but I guess then I'll buy you the Miku skin. The Miku skin. Camellia paused in the doorway, her eyes widening slightly at Chad's bold proposition. A slow, wicked grin spread across her face as she turned to face him fully, her hands on her wide hips. They really do just describe the exact same thing multiple times.
Her boobs bounce tittily.
Yeah. This apartment that we are spending time in has a trampoline floor. They did mention that in the text so far, but it's
She's
my
constantly
assumption.
Wiggling.
Yeah.
It's like we put like the collision on like absolute max, and she's just constantly kind of jittering a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Well,
we have a deal. Oh my gosh, she's gonna play Fortnite with us.
Hell yeah. So we have a deal, but if we win, I expect you to make good on your promise, and then maybe mommy will have a little reward for you too. She sashayed into the living room like this is a dance number. And then she sits on the couch and then says, well, come on, darling. Let's show this Miku character what a real power couple looks like. As if anything could be more of a power couple than Miku and Godzilla, besties in every universe. And then maybe, if you're very good, Mummy will let you show her that new skin of yours personally. So I have a hunch that
the cosplay.
Oh hell yeah! Get her to wear the Miku outfit. Okay. Well, we're about to play Fortnite, so we have to turn on Fortnite. So step one, if I type in with star codes, does it come up as instructions from me as well? Or is it only when they do it? Yeah.
It makes everything italicized, and it's usually meant to convey like narration.
Okay. I dismount my pogo stick.
You just been on a pogo stick the whole time. That's why everything's so bouncy. She's also been on a pogo
Look,
stick.
we're both all jiggling. I have few conclusions that I could possibly come to. The chief among which is that we're on a tandem pogo stick. And I pirouette into the lounge room, following up on the sachet, inserting the Fortnite VHS.
Oh yeah, Fortnite on VHS. Let's go.
Into the TV.
You're good at Fortnite.
I hope you're good at video games. I think we should raise the stakes. If we win, you have to cosplay as Hatsune Miku. Miki. I can never spell Miku.
Hatsune Milf-ku.
Okay. Hatsune Milf-ku. And dye your hair blue. And if we lose, I'll put my clothes in the what is it called? It's the shredder that you put green waste into. That's what I'm thinking of, and I can't.
Recycling bin?
No. It's a shredder. It's a shredder, like a machine that they used to destroy trees.
And those just called. Well, I know like there's like a paper shredder. I don't know what the tree thing's called.
What if I just put it in the garbage disposal? That's a thing we don't have in this country, but I understand that it destroys things.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't recommend putting clothes in your garbage disposal. I suppose
no,
you
absolutely
could.
not. But I think that's what she'll want. I think she'll want me to get naked. Let's see what she says to this. It would be really funny to like imagine filming this as a movie where both of the characters are stationary, but the back room is kind of wiggling, and the camera zooms out, and you see both of the characters are bouncing on pogo sticks in unison.
She's still sauntering and swaying and jiggling.
Yeah.
You're playing with fire, sweetheart.
Well, she likes the way we think. We have a deal. I wonder if we could just.
She mentioned victory royales. She's calling back to 2 messages
She
ago.
is, yeah.
Let's go.
If we lose, you'll have to strip naked and put every stitch of clothing in the garbage disposal. And then, let's just say I'll find a way to make you feel better about it. Well, we're not planning on losing, but you want us to lose. She's going to throw so that I have to get naked and then we fuck. Let's win this for mommy and for your new MILF-ku.
She wants to cosplay Miku. She's secretly a weeb.
Alright, where are we dropping?
I literally, my only context for Fortnite is like that one Fortnite parody song. I know Tomato Town is apparently a thing.
And the timer starts for when we must depart. Alright, mommy.
Let's get this bread.
Where are we dropping? Let's get this bread. Here's bread. Ah, fuck. She's gonna latch onto that and it's gonna become cursed, isn't it?
Sometimes they sort of autocorrect like some of the typos I've done.
Yeah. So the bot
It's kind of
has
funny though.
inferred through context that she should have a controller for playing the game. This is a thing that we've not mentioned at all. And in fact, I buried the lead by saying that we used a VHS to play the game, which is kind of funny. Oh, wow, hang
Just
on. She said Tilted Towers. She actually knows Fortnite by context. Amazing.
it's always exciting there. Just like mommy likes it.
Oh my
Has she
god.
jerked off to Fortnite before?
That's so funny. It doesn't actually surprise me at all that the cougar friend of your mother, who is very happy being called mommy by the main character, who must be a minor because they require adult supervision, knows Fortnite well enough so that she could spend time with other minors. Like, this doesn't at all strike me as strange.
Oh god. Also, we're at 15 minutes.
Alright. So the plan was to have a look at the bot, get a little bit of an idea for how it runs. And as you can see, they managed to kind of pick up what we were talking about with Fortnite, despite me mentioning a whole bunch of other goofy shit as well. So they actually do a pretty good job of kind of following what's going on, even though we've like very clearly added an interlude for what the bot's kind of expecting to happen. Like I can imagine most users are going to be like, "Hey, yo, let's get it," rub them titties on my face or something. And the bot will be like, "Absolutely, my dear. Here they are, flop, flop," and then you just kind of go from there. We've managed to, I don't know, add Fortnite as foreplay, which I don't know if that's a thing that's ever happened. I don't know. Hot bedroom idea: lock your partner in a chastity cage and then say that they cannot be unlocked until they win Victory Royale while in a duo with you, and you throw the entire time. New
Okay, I
season's
guess I'll
battle
use this
strat.
as like a chance to talk a little bit about some of the more in-depth features
Yeah.
because like I said, I haven't necessarily compared Janitor to other sites yet. It works for the style of roleplay I like. So Janitor is definitely made more for long form roleplay, as you can tell by sort of like the generic length of the bot's descriptions is like a couple of paragraphs. It's meant to be something where you're sort of writing a good amount in response. People usually recommend anywhere between like 1 to 4 paragraphs, so you can get really lengthy, but the bot's really only going to kind of latch onto a couple of things from your reply. So that's immediately one of the things that's going to be very different about role playing with a bot is that if you write like, an absolute essay, like that's cool and all, but they're really only going to pay attention to a couple of those paragraphs. And so a lot of that is just going to get missed. So it's actually usually more optimal to sort of do a shorter reply or to use certain sentences and sort of physical cues to emphasize certain words. So, for example, like italics and bold can sometimes be a way of being like, hey, this is an important thing or something that I want to be referenced. Some people recommend, like, in your last paragraph, that should be where, like, the important bit goes, whatever it is you want them to respond to or whatever you think is the most interesting. Go ahead and actually open up the settings for a second, the little hamburger menu. So you'll see here, one of the interesting things is that they do actually have API settings. So what the API settings do is, and I haven't had the ability to experiment with this yet, but you can actually use OpenAI, Claude, or other proxies if you have basically credentials for them. And I've heard people have way better experiences with like OpenAI and Claude. There's entire guides on like how to jailbreak them and what kinds of advanced prompts you can use to get like ChatGPT to do the NSFW, even though it doesn't always want to. The real benefit of the Janitor LLM is that it's free and it works out of the box. It's going to do all of the naughty things. The problem I find with it is we don't know exactly what Janitor LLM was trained on. My guess would be romance novels and fan fiction, and sometimes it shows.
Yeah,
There's
real.
certain phrases like, the hips swaying and the ample curve of her bosom, like stuff like that that you really only fucking see in like romance novels and fan fiction. And when every single bot is using the same exact phrases to describe stuff, or like I've played with a lot of the dominant male bots, and they have like a couple of actions they do a lot, such as tilting your chin up. It doesn't matter if you're across the room, they will like stomp their way over and tilt your chin up because they like doing that a lot. Or they'll say things like, "Oh, you're playing a dangerous game, you naughty little minx," and I'm like, "That's not how humans speak." So that's been like the biggest kind of downside of the janitor LLM is you'll start to notice the repetition and quirks if you play with certain archetypes. There are ways you can sort of customize it. So there's this advanced prompt button, and that's basically where you can make a custom prompt that you apply to all of the bots you play with. A lot of people have guides on different things you can put in your advanced prompt. So you can add in things about how, like, introduce new characters, progress the plot slowly, avoid positivity bias, avoid acting for the character. It's just sort of subtle things you can just add in to see if it'll get the AI to cooperate with you a bit more. And then if you go back to the rest of the settings, so the other two big things are the generation settings and the chat memory. So for generation settings, you have two options. You have temperature and max new tokens. So temperature is basically how crazy the bot can get. So if with 0 being like it's going to be extremely normal and extremely logical, but like not very interesting, and 2 being like it will go off the shits and just like do whatever the fuck. This is something you can also play around with if you feel like, oh, all my role plays feel the same, or like this plot, they're just repeating themselves. They won't progress the plot forward. I usually play around with this one a lot. People usually suggest somewhere around 0.8, but I've gone up to 1.2 for some of the wackier bots where like I want them to do weird things. Like right now, I'm role playing with a bot that's like an alien who is horribly disguising itself as a human, and like I want it to be very weird. And then the max new tokens is just the length of the reply. So if you put it to 0, it's unlimited. So the bot can go on for as long as it wants. Some people really like this. I did not because you just kind of end up with paragraphs and paragraphs of it repeating itself and describing things. And it's like, okay, cool, but what's your point? Um, 500 is, as you can see, it's like a couple of paragraphs, some good bits of dialogue. And then, if you make it shorter, you might get like a paragraph or so. Make it longer, you can get some novels. The only problem with like changing the tokens is sometimes the bot will get cut off mid-sentence, which can be a little annoying. You can actually edit the bot's replies. So you'll see there's like a little pencil icon next to both our reply and the bot's reply. So something you can do is, if you do make a typo or if you forget to add in something, you can edit your reply and add in stuff. Or you can go in and change the bot's reply, like especially if they say something that's like incorrect or like not canon about your character. If they're like, oh, if they implied that we were already naked or something and we're not, we're wearing clothes, then I might go into the reply and just fix that if it's like a really easy fix. You can also regenerate a reply. So there's a little arrow at the very bottom. You can use that to basically just re-roll it and see what happens next. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it just rephrases the exact same reply, like nothing kind of changes. It just changes the synonyms and uses a thesaurus. And that's somewhere where the other thing is if you go back to your original reply, you don't like any of the replies it's giving you, you've tried re-rolling, you might just need to edit your reply. Sometimes you just haven't really given the bot anything to go off of, so it just ends up repeating itself. So, right here we're shit posting. We're actually giving the bot a lot to work with because we're being like wacky and unexpected. But if you just say like, yes, mommy, or something, like it's just going to keep talking to itself essentially. So you have to do a little bit of the initiation, especially if you want certain things to happen. One thing I have found interesting is that you can sort of subtly make the bot whatever you want of it, or even corrupt relatively normal bots. I had one really long chat, like with over 200 something messages, and the basic bot was just like your hot CEO boss who wants to impregnate you and have a family, and it's like kind of weirdly wholesome. Like he wants to take you away from your life of capitalism by making you into a housewife. And I was like, okay, cool. But what if I made this like more like terrifying? Like your boss, because he essentially starts off by like coming into your apartment out of nowhere. I was like, oh, breaking and entering. So I just included some language that sort of implied that my character was very unhappy with this, and eventually I had her essentially punch him, and it just triggered him to be a lot more sadistic and a lot more evil, and made it a lot more like non-con into the sort of dark direction. So there are some like subtle ways you can get what you want out of certain bots, especially if they have sort of like vague personalities where their only personality trait is like horny. What kind of horny do you want? And then the last thing, and this is probably one of the most important things to getting this AI to work with you, is the chat memory function. As anyone who's worked with AI long term probably knows, if you've ever used one of these chatbots, is that they have amnesia. Um, they forget things very quickly. There's a lot of math behind it, but essentially they can just only remember a maximum amount of things, especially depending on what kind of LLM you're using. Janitor LLM doesn't have the most extensive memory. So, 50 messages later, she's gonna forget that we even played Fortnite, for example, and she might be like, "Oh, what game is that?" And you're like, "But we played it together." And that's what sort of the chat memory is meant to be used for. So, it's meant to be somewhere where you can put stuff that you want the bot to remember, and this can be anything from like your appearance. So I use it to keep track of my character's clothes a lot, because that's something that's important to me. Is like, what am I wearing? Am I undressed? Am I in a state of undress? So I edit it like pretty frequently anytime that changes, just so that way it's not like we're like mid coitus and suddenly I'm wearing a shirt again, um, other things you can use it for is like character relationships. So I use it to sort of briefly describe the vibe of our characters. So, like, it's good if you want that enemies to lovers, because the problem with enemies to lovers is a lot of these bots don't do slow burn well. They want to just rail you after like 5 messages. So if you want something that's more slow burn, if you want something that's a little bit more understated, you can kind of use chat memory to be like, so and so and whatever are just friends right now, or like they hate each other for XYZ's reasons. You can also use this to help change the bot a little bit. So, for example, with the previous bot I corrupted, he got kind of too evil at a certain point, and I was like, well, still wants to make her wife. He just wants to make her his wife in the worst way possible. So I just added in a line about how like, oh, like he has enough affection to know not to like break her too bad, essentially. And he started to change his personality a little bit after that. And then the other thing is just like major events. So if you do want to have sort of a plot driven story, and there are actually some bots on here that are really good at plot. Some people make really lore heavy bots, especially if you get into stuff like monster girls or like fantasy species or sci-fi. Like people really like making universes of that. So you can have like major events of like what has happened with these characters, or like what are they trying to do? What is their goal? And while it's not a perfect system by any means, it does work. I have seen the bots actively respond to things I put in the chat memory. Again, it is also limited. There's only so much you can put in the summary before you run out of space. Though 2,000 tokens is generally quite a lot. And yes, she has been a guest on the Sexy Business podcast now.
One of the bits that we had set up initially was to like literally talk to the bot as if they were a guest on the podcast to see how they would respond. But
I mean, maybe
weirdly,
if we ever do a follow up, you could make a bot based on one of your characters. I'll make a bot based on Neko-chan.
yeah,
We interview each other.
that would be funny. And see what happens. See what horrible slander we say about ourselves when it's digitally generated. But yeah, how about that? Was there anything else you wanted to cover with the settings and how it all comes together? You did a pretty good job
Yeah,
running through everything.
Yeah, I've done way too much research on this because I got into it kind of over winter break, and then it became like my hyper fixation for a week where I was like, okay, how are people getting this to work really well? There's a lot of good resources on Reddit. So if you're like, oh, this sounds really interesting and I want to start using this thing, go on Reddit. They have advice on how to use advanced user prompts, on how to use the chat memory better. They have like pre-made chat memory suggestions if you're like, I don't know what to put here. And there are also just like legitimately a ton of bots on here. So no matter what you're into, whether you are looking for your foodadom mommy mistress, or if you're looking for subby cute boys, or just if you just want generic sort of like girlfriend roleplay, or if you want something dark and kinky, all of that is here. The one thing I do like about this site is that, aside from things that are like illegal, like underage characters and things like that, they are like pretty open. There's some like pretty hardcore non-con you can do. They won't do gore, like they won't describe gore, but they can do still some pretty fucked up things. There's lots of yandere and sort of like stalker and kidnapper types of bots. It's a fun thing to sort of waste some time on, and it is free, so you don't really have to make any investments if you don't want to. The only thing you would have to ever invest into is if you wanted to use OpenAI or Claude, you do have to pay for a subscription to that one, and there are really extensive guides on how to use that.
I suggested another goofy thing to try and keep the plot going, and she instead suggested that we should maybe have superhero inspired sex.
Oh my gosh.
And look, I feel like all of the
Spider-Man?
dialogue in my life would be improved if it ended with them ignoring whatever I said and suggesting superhero inspired sex. So I can't really complain.
It's like very like the first 5 minutes of like mainstream porn.
Yeah. Oh, why are you here? I have to check the fire alarm. Like, oh, okay. Why
Why
aren't
don't
you
you check
wearing any
my fire
clothes?
alarm?
Yeah. I'm alarmed that there is a fire inside me or some shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Or you can always fuck around with these bots too. I mean, I think the funniest thing is reading the comments and reviews, and like, especially for like the non-con
Yeah.
bots, it's very funny seeing people who are just like, I called the police and they arrested him.
Yeah, one of the comments on this bot that we're using at the moment was she tucks me into bed and made me pancakes, 10 out of 10.
They can do some soft and comfy role plays too, if you're just like, I want the mommy, but not the sexy part.
Hmm. Which is kind of cool. So I think this is a cool thing just to kind of play around with and experiment. I have heard of people using these kind of chatbots as for mindfulness. Pokimane actually uses Claude as like a mindfulness activity and talks to him, and he's like very validating and talks about what the problem is, and it's kind of lets her vent and stuff like that. And I think for that kind of thing, it can have some value, but also being able to explore your interests in a way where you're able to set the pace. Because one of the problems with making games and some of the content that we make, I'll go, yeah, this is super hot. This is exactly this one specific scene, and every single person is going to have a different take on what they want out of that thing. Like we did one of our more dominant characters in Sleep Shock had somebody else top her in front of you as like a power bottom type thing, and people got in a big argument about whether that was something that her character would do. And so obviously everyone's going to have a different take on what's happening, and when you're digesting a product that somebody else has made, like a visual novel, which incorporates that one person's vision of the story, you have a bit less control, unless if they have put in all of the options, on what kind of happens with the narrative. With the chatbot, you can play around with as much as you want. You can customize it to kind of fit so it's always running down the tracks that you want, and set things up so that things are crazy. What if we invite her to be a guest on the podcast? What if instead of hot, steamy sex, you were a guest on my podcast? And that's kind of I think why it's a good idea to come and talk about these kind of things. I'm not a big AI enjoyer myself. I'm kind of only ever seeing the horrible things that it does recently. And then every now and again you hear about some good uses that it has, like on a personal level rather than on a business level, because I mostly engage with it on a business level. It's cool to see that some goofy things like this can have nice upside on a personal level. And I think it's worth checking out because it is free. And this is not like a sponsored ad or anything. Do you really think our fucking 200 subscriber podcast has sponsors on it? This is just something in the space that we thought was kind of cool, and maybe you would appreciate having a look at, because that's the purpose of the Sexy Business Podcast. We are trying to talk about and encompass both what's new and happening, but also other creators in the space. And I suppose an AI chatbot is technically creating content in the space, you could argue. And we're trying to, be people talking about these kinds of things in an open and honest way, and trying to destigmatize how weird it is to talk about horny shit, because that's cool. I appreciate that part of the show, and maybe you do too. And if you are enjoying the show, make sure you click the like button, click the subscribe button. I'm sure Camellia would appreciate it, as she's been a fantastic guest.
Make mommy happy.
Make mommy happy. And look, stick around because we've got another couple of cool episodes coming up. More guests, more games, more exciting things to happen as we're just getting started in this year 2025. So stick around, click all the buttons so that the algorithm will deliver some more sexy business podcast content directly to your door. And stick around and we'll see you soon.